Well, it looks like I've got a type and Apple Music knows it. This album came to me from an Apple Music pick. Honestly, I have never really given Chuck Ragan's solo work much of a thought. I mean, if you've heard one ex-punk rocker solo acoustic album, you've kind of heard them all, right? And honestly, while I do say that jokingly, I've kind of felt like they've shared similarities, leaning a little into that folk rock Americana vibe, going as far back as Mike Judge and Old Smoke. And even though this album does share that DNA, it immediately converted me. This album was less dreary acoustic and more big band Bruce Springsteen.
She said, lay down, we only have till midnight to leave this town and wander far from home.
It was a nice surprise, and I enjoyed the album front to back. By the time Till Midnight arrived in 2014, Chuck Ragan was already carrying two reputations at once. Co-frontman of Hot Water Music, one of the defining bands of melodic post-hardcore, and one of the most credible figures in that punk to Americana migration that took shape in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And after considering how much I've avoided listening to his solo work, it feels kind of weird to write that. This album comes off of Ragan spending more time at home after a hectic stretch, and that change of pace helped to influence his writing on this album. The themes lean harder into domestic life, gratitude, and love, more than the typical restlessness the internet says you find in his material. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to say for sure since this is where I started in his solo catalog. Till Midnight was recorded in 2013 and released in early 2014. The official album page identifies Christopher Thorne of Blind Melon as a producer, engineer, and mixer, with sessions taking place at Fireside Sound and Phonogenic Sound in Los Angeles. The production sound seems to have been fuller and more collaborative than on some of Ragan's earlier solo work. Reviews repeatedly pointed out that this record expands beyond the more stripped-down setup associated with his acoustic troubadour image. The core contributors included John Gaunt on fiddle and Joe Ginsberg on bass, with many other contributors throughout helping shape this album. In an interview, he explained that Something May Catch Fire changed significantly through collaboration with Joe Ginsberg, who suggested a different approach to the verse that altered the song's energy completely. That suggests this record was treated not just as another solo artist plus backing musician's album. Most of the reviews I saw online seem a little restrained and call it Americana or Heartland rock, but shy away from calling it what it really is. This sounds very heavily influenced by Bruce Springsteen, with traces of his punk DNA coming through. And let's not get confused, this doesn't sound like a novelty punk singer-solo album either. This album has a bigness and confidence to it that I really wasn't expecting. The instrumentation and those collaborations are a big part of that. Fiddle, pedal steel, organ, accordion, harmonica, and drums keep the record from sitting in that pure singer-songwriter territory. This album sounds warmer and more expansive than the image many people had of Chuck Ragan's solo work. But this is still Chuck Ragan, and you are not going to escape that graveled voice sound of Hot Water Music, which peeks its head through from time to time. Some May Catch Fire, this opener is one of the album's clearest mission statements. Multiple reviews have singled it out immediately, describing it as a rousing, melodic, high-energy start, with prominent fiddle and big singable chorus. And what they leave out is its similarity to Bruce Springsteen. Lyrically, it is more personal and emotionally direct. And in the broader arc of the album, it announces the record's hopeful, committed, hard-on-the-sleeve tone right away. Diving into Non-Typical, this is one of the songs that is most clearly framed as a relationship song, while being an example of how Ragan has grown as an artist, while still keeping his grit and gravel. And if somebody wants evidence that the punk engine is still there, Revved is the first stop. Reviewers called it the closest thing on the album to an acoustic or rootsy Hot Water Music song, and from the first note that rings true. Musically, it carries more urgency than the softer material, while lyrically it channels commitment and drive rather than youthful collapse. This track is one of the best examples of Ragan translating his old intensity into a new language. The dominant lyrical themes on Till Midnight are love, loyalty, companionship, gratitude, home, and emotional steadiness. More than one interview or review from the time emphasized that this record is unusually centered on long-term affection and mutual reliance. One interviewer even summarized the record's mood as friendship, love, and loyalty. The material seems somewhat autobiographical. It presents love as a hard-earned commitment, written by somebody who knows what instability feels like from a lifetime of touring. The album tends to reach more towards connection rather than wallowing in isolation and loneliness. The album was well received in the punk, alternative, and roots-oriented music press. Reviews were strongly positive, with several critics calling it his best or most accomplished solo album to this point. Reviewers were constantly praising the expanded band feel, the stronger dynamics, and the way that the record balanced his rough-edged delivery with more developed melodic structures. Even the critics that didn't see this as a radical departure still tended to see it as a refinement and strengthening of his solo formula. Till Midnight has a strong reputation as one of his stronger solo albums. Retrospective and later writing on Ragan often places it among key landmarks of his solo discography, and even contemporary reviews framed it as a peak or a near-peak solo statement. Its broader legacy is less about its direct influence on younger bands, and more about what it represents in his own lineage. Ragan had already become one of the most visible examples of a punk songwriter moving credibly into Americana. Until Midnight is one of the records that show this transition at its full maturity. It helped to solidify the idea that this was not just a side project or some temporary detour. Some of the interesting facts that came across while researching this video are that Christopher Thorne of Blind Melon not only produced, engineered, and mixed this album, but also contributed some of the instrumentation. Bedroll Lullaby was actually written from a different perspective and tied to the film It's Better in the Wind than just being purely autobiographical. Reviewers repeatedly framed the album as unusually focused on love and home life, which made it stand apart from his more road-worn tone people kind of associate with him. Till Midnight matters because it captured Chuck Ragan at a point where his solo career stopped feeling like an extension of his punk past, and it started sounding fully self-defined. Released in 2014, it took the grit and conviction people knew from Hot Water Music and fused it with a richer Americana and roots rock palette. The bigger arrangements, stronger melodies, and more openly devoted writing made it one of the most acclaimed solo records of his career. It's not his loudest album, but it very well may be the one that best shows how far his songwriting can stretch without actually losing its backbone. This album is what I would want to hear if I was picking up a Chuck Ragan solo album for the first time. It got away from that punk guy with an acoustic guitar cliche that's made me avoid his work up until now. Are there any other punk guy with a guitar cliches that I should go check out?